In the autumn of 1938, Europe was a continent on the brink. The escalating tensions between Germany and Czechoslovakia were reaching a fever pitch, and the decisions made by Romania during this period would prove to be of monumental importance, setting the stage for the outbreak of the Second World War as we know it today. Welcome to History Bites podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to not lose our newest materials. Thank you for your support. So, let's now focus on the situation in 1938. Things were very complex back then. The Soviet Union under Stalin was being courted by the Anglo-French alliance to intervene militarily in support of Prague. For the Soviet army to enter Czechoslovakia, however, they would need to traverse either Poland or Romania, as there was no direct border between the Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia. Given Poland's known hostility, the focus turned to Romania, which ultimately refused transit, fearing that once the Soviets entered, they might not leave, a pattern seen throughout history. Romania already had a negative experience with Russia. In 1878, even though the two countries were allies, and Russia had signed a treaty specifically guaranteeing the integrality of Romanian territories, Russia occupied the southern Moldova, the Bugiak region, now part of Ukraine. Also, Russia occupied half of Moldova in 1812, named by Russian propaganda Bessarabia, which is currently known as the Republic of Moldova. Moldova united with Romania back in 1918, but as the future events will prove it, USSR or Russia could not be trusted to respect any other countries or any treaty they sign. USSR will occupy again Bessarabia in 1939, and as a bonus the northern Romania, known as Bukovina, which will eventually end up as part of current Ukraine, deporting and massacring much of the Romanian population in the process. Before the infamous Munich conference of September 29th to 30th, 1938, where Britain and France would acquiesce to Hitler's demands and consent to Germany's occupation of the Sudetenland, there was an intense diplomatic ballet in which Romania played a more significant role than might initially appear. With Hitler's rise to power in January 1933 and the overt display of Germany's revisionist policy, France began seeking ways to counter Berlin's ambitions. On May 2, 1935, French Foreign Minister Pierre Laval signed a mutual assistance treaty with the Soviet Union. Paris then pressured its Eastern European allies to do the same, leading to Czechoslovakia signing a nearly identical treaty with Moscow 2 weeks later on May 16, 1935. The Anglo-French, hesitant to engage militarily in the East, sought to build an alliance system to encircle Germany, with the Soviet Union to provide military defense in the event of a Hitler-led aggression in Eastern Europe. This was the beginning of a grand chess game between the great powers, with Romania caught in the middle. The functioning of the treaties between France, the Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia hinged, in fact, on Romania. A Romanian-Soviet treaty was necessary to facilitate the transport of the Red Army into Czechoslovakia in case of war with Germany. Romania found itself in a delicate alliance with Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, the Little Entente, primarily aimed at countering Hungarian revisionism. Yet at the same time, Romania harbored deep mistrust towards the Soviet Union, which the French saw as an ally. Over the centuries, as shown earlier, Russia had repeatedly broken its commitments, annexing Bessarabia in 1812 and Bugiak in 1878, despite treaties expressly obligating respect for Romanian territorial integrity. To reach Czechoslovakia, the Soviets needed a terrestrial and aerial corridor through northeastern Romania, namely Bukovina, and a small part of northern Bessarabia, both parts of interwar Romania. However, Moscow did not recognize the union of Bessarabia to Romania. Thus, King Carol II and the entire Romanian political class feared that the Soviets would use a transit agreement as a pretext to occupy Bukovina and Bessarabia. History showed they were right. As an interesting side idea, Romania's fear of Russia was so deep that it became one of the most important allies of Germany against the USSR during the Second World War, and even after 1945 and until 1989, when the country was subsequently under Soviet occupation and part of the communist bloc. All military plans and rehearsals for a resistance against a foreign military invasion were considering an attack from the east, not the west. For the French and British in 1938, Germany represented the primary enemy, but for Romanians the threat came from the Soviet Union and Hungary. These fears would be swiftly confirmed in the following 2 years. As Romania's foreign minister, the brilliant Nicolae Titulescu advocated for a Romanian-Soviet treaty that would secure Moscow's recognition of Romania's territorial integrity. The realism of Titulescu's approach remains a controversial topic to this day, with some Romanian historians viewing his diplomacy as naively optimistic, given the Soviets' global reputation for treaty violations. In any case, by June 1935, Titulescu informed France that the draft treaty with the USSR was ready, pending discussions with 2 other important Eastern allies, Yugoslavia and Poland. The treaty also outlined the conditions under which Soviet troops could transit Romania in the event of a German aggression against Czechoslovakia. The Poles vehemently opposed allowing the Red Army into Czechoslovakia, sharing Romania's fear that the Soviets might forget to leave, as was their habit. Yet Titulescu remained a brilliant mind and a diplomat of rare caliber. He conditioned the Romanian-Soviet treaty on France's guarantee that the Soviets would withdraw immediately after the war's end. Otherwise, he feared the Red Army might enter and occupy Bessarabia either under the treaty or during a local attack. Moreover, such an arrangement would have implied a division of influence between France and the Soviet Union in Europe, with Romania falling within the Russian sphere of influence. At the same time, in the event of an Eastern European war, even Titulescu wanted his country to fight against Soviet Russia to defend itself and Europe from Bolshevism. Thus, the diplomatic situation was exceedingly complicated. Logistically, Poland had a far superior network of roads and railways than Romania, but the leaders in Warsaw were unyielding. They refused to even consider allowing Soviet transit through their territory. The reasons were manifold. Poland and Czechoslovakia had a border dispute over the Teschen region, which belonged to the Czechs but was claimed by the Poles. Moreover, like the Romanians, the Poles feared the Soviets would not honor their word. There was also another factor that made both Romania and Poland view the potential entry of the Soviets into Czechoslovakia as a threat. The Bolsheviks had been contained with great difficulty in the period from 1918 to 1920, after very tough wars fought by the Romanians and Poles. Neither country wanted the Soviets to now be handed a vast bridgehead into the heart of Europe. Bucharest and Warsaw harbored no illusions, unlike Paris and London. Once the Soviets entered Czechoslovakia under the pretext of aiding the country, it was very likely that they would not be easily removed. Nevertheless, French diplomacy held great hopes, and the Soviets eagerly awaited Paris to pave their way to the continent's heart. In the spring and summer of 1938, the subject of the Red Army's transit through Romania was at the top of discussions between the Bucharest government and the great powers. However, by then, Titulescu had been dismissed from his position as Romania's foreign minister in August 1936. From that point on, the Romanian governments and King Carol II danced around the issue, avoiding clear expressions on the subject. Pressure was applied, the French made frequent visits to Bucharest, and there were some hopes given Romania's special friendship with Czechoslovakia, but with no clear results. As we now already know, Czechoslovakia lost in the face of Hungarian and German aggression, and later, Germany signed a treaty with the USSR, which led to the partition of Poland and the occupation of a lot of Romania's territories by USSR, Hungary and Bulgaria. This detailed examination sheds light on Romania's critical yet often overlooked role in the 1938 Czechoslovak crisis, revealing the intricate dance of diplomacy and the nation's strategic decisions that influenced the course of history leading up to the Second World War. Also, in the light of current events in Ukraine, it is a reminder of the fact that Russia has always been an aggressor, no matter what type of regime it harbors. Russia should never, ever be trusted or allowed to get in a position of power in Europe or elsewhere for that matter.